Hey, what's going on, everybody? Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker here, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the GVM YU200 and 300 and just how well do they compare against the Aputure Nova P300c. I want to thank GVM for sending this out to me so I can provide you with this review today. The TLDR here is, there's about a $200 difference between the 200 and the 300 model. In terms of the output difference, it's only about a quarter of a stop, which basically means it's negligible at this point. The caveats is actually how it actually performs. So the YU200, the back panel, if you're doing bicolor, it's not accurate. Your 3200K needs to actually be set to 2900K if you want an accurate tungsten color. And then in daylight, if you want an accurate 5600K, you need to set it to 6600K. Whereas the 300 model doesn't seem to have this problem. The back panel is pretty spot on in terms of its bicolored Kelvin readings. Now, in terms of color, the colors are all quite good, except for the green channel. There is a difference between the two. The YU200 is much more saturated compared to the 300 model. I'm not exactly sure why, but it is something I noticed. And basically what I'm saying here is, if you want to do the green magenta shift, the YU200 might actually do a little bit better because it actually has full access to that green saturation channel. Not only that, if you want to do a quick and dirty green screen and you just want to take that green and shoot it at the back wall of something, you're going to have much more saturation to work with and making it easier for you to key out. Whereas the very desaturated YU300 is not going to do as well. That's pretty much the things that you really need to know about between the two models to kind of figure out which one you want. So that is the TLDR. Let's get to the full meat of this review. In terms of pricing, the YU200 comes in at $1,200, the YU300 comes in at $1,400, and the Aputure Nova is going to come in at $1,900. Now, in terms of what you get in the box, you actually get quite a lot here, and in some cases makes this a really good value. The GVM will actually give you a nice flight case to go with everything. Now, the hinges are not exactly the strongest hinge. You could probably replace it if you want to, but in terms of the actual outer box, it is nice. There's foam inside, and it will protect the LED, no problem. You're also going to get yourself the power cable, which is a Neutrix lock, which is awesome. You also have some DMX cables, should you want to go into a DMX light board. Now, the YU200 will actually give you this additional accessory, which is a battery cable. Basically, you got two D-tap ends that go to your V-mount batteries, and then that goes into the back of your panel to battery power it. The YU300 does not come with this, so you're going to have to buy that separately. In terms of the build quality, it is a mixture of metal and hard construction plastic. It does feel very dense because this thing is basically a huge aluminum heatsink, which is pretty nice. When it comes to the design of the 200 model, it's a bit unique because, as you see here, there are two places for you to mount your V-mount batteries. So if you're going to be using that included DC plug, it's very simple for you to hook everything up and power this panel with V-mount batteries. The 300, on the other hand, as you can see, does not have this feature here at all. I'm not exactly sure why, so if you are planning to use V-mount batteries with a 300 model, you're going to have to find a different way to mount your V-mounts. And last but not least, because this is very close to the Aputure Nova P300c, the front panel is basically this huge diffusion cover, basically causing this LED to be a single source light. So you're not going to have to worry about the multi-shadow problem that you would get with other cheaper LEDs. On the back over here, we have a pretty basic control panel. GVM really hasn't changed this in basically 5 years. So we have the intensity over here, and this one does move in 0.1 increments. And of course, it can go much more than that, which is great. And these are not hard stop knobs, so they're just going to keep turning no matter what. Over here, we can change either our color temperature Kelvin, or when we're in RGB, we can change the hue. And over here, we can actually change the green magenta shift. And it's great to see that this panel does have these adjustments because those are definitely useful when you need to get color accurate lights. Now, looking over here, the mode button is what you're going to press if you want to go into your HSI mode over here. And like I said, this will take care of your intensity. This will take care of your hue in terms of different colors, and then this will take care of your saturation. Now, the saturation is not going to be anything to write home about. Basically, the more you go down to 0, it's going to look extremely magenta, so not really worth using, in my opinion. Next up, we have gels, and basically you have a couple different setups here. This is going to do your intensity. If you want to change this, you're going to click on the selector button and it's going to take you to Lee, or you can move over to Roscoe Gels, basically hit select again, and then choose which gel you would like. Next up, we have the RGB. So if you want to actually just move each RGB increments on your own, you can do that. Basically, this will handle the red, this will handle the green, this will handle the blue. Next mode, we have source matching. And basically, you'll see here it says type and it says tungsten. So basically, this is what they believe each thing is matched up with. So we have HMIs, studio lamps, and a couple other different lights that they will try to match. And basically, you can pick from there. We also have the effects. So this is only using the bicolor only. So you can do lightning, color loops, basically everything you've seen from bicolored lights, paparazzi explosion. And then if you click one more time in the mode, this is color effects. So this is where you're going to find your disco lights, your cop lights, and all that other good stuff with color. And now we're back to CCT mode. Next up, we're going to take a look at the menu super quick. Basically, DMX setup, pretty self-explanatory if you are trying to hook it up to a light board. We'll hit the back button to go back. And then dimming curve, basically, what kind of curve do you like? Linear is fine for me. Light frequency. Now this is if you are trying to shoot something with high shutter rates. So at 25 kilohertz, that just means we can shoot up to about 1/200 or 25 thousandths. And you can move this down if needed be, but generally speaking, keeping it at 25 is more than enough for what you need. Next up, we have Bluetooth when you're setting yourself up to the app. And then we have fan mode, which we have auto, we have quiet, quiet, and then we have high. So I would just kind of leave it on auto, honestly. It does a pretty good job at keeping at a nice low noise level. If you are outdoors, then I would probably just say keep it out on high, especially if it's really hot outside. Then we have display setup, and basically it's the brightness, and also if you want it always on, or you can have it turn off after a couple seconds. I just leave it on always on. And last but not least, we have a factory reset. Now, the last button that I want to talk about here is the on-off, which says cool. And you kind of think that this means it's going to turn on and off the fan, but from what I can tell, it doesn't really do anything. You hold it, and what it's going to do, it's actually going to turn off the light, and the fan is going to go on for a little bit, and then it's going to turn off. I'm not exactly sure what use this is for most people, but it's there if you do see a use for it. And simply hold the button, and it'll turn back on. Now, like all filmmaking equipment these days, it does have a smartphone app function. The only thing that I don't like about this app is that it does ask you for your email address, and I just don't like to give them to people because I don't want you to spam me with your products. So GVM, stop doing that. I know why you're doing it, but don't do it. Godox doesn't do this, and Aputure has since stopped doing it as well, so just give us the app. All right, let's move on to the output tests to see how well these panels perform. Now the YU200 is on the left side, the YU300 is on the right side, and of course my camera settings are always up top. As you can see, the lux readings are really not that different between the color temperatures, so you're really only getting about a quarter stop difference between these panels, which to me is pretty negligible. Looking at how these numbers compare against the Nova, we do see that the Nova is brighter, and by my calculations, we're looking at a little over half a stop brighter. Next up is the color quality, and here's what I was talking about with the YU200. The bicolor is not correct. On the left side, this is what happens if you set the panel to 3200K, and it looks a little cool. So you actually need to go to 2900K to actually get the tungsten color you want. And here is the vector scope to kind of give you a before and after to see how this changes. Next up is the YU200 in its 5600K form, just to show you again. The panel on the back, if it's at 5600K, it looks too warm. You need to send it to 6600K to actually get it to the right color. And again, here is the vector scope to show you that difference. So with all that corrected, here's the 200 and 300 in tungsten mode. And as you can see, the vector scopes are quite good. The skin tones and the reds are going to go towards yellow because that's simply how Panasonic likes to do their color science. So in terms of the tungsten LEDs, these are actually quite good readings. Moving on to the daylight, Pretty much exactly what we would expect. It does a really great job maintaining your skin tones, and all the other color chips are doing quite well. In terms of RGB colors, here are the output numbers that I got. These numbers are really good, and it's definitely going to help you saturate your indoor scene, maybe some nighttime outdoor scenes, no problem. When I was performing the RGB tests, I noticed that the green did not look similar between the two panels, and when I did a further test, it's true. So the YU300 is not as saturated as the YU200 as you see here. This could affect how you do your green magenta shifts, which this panel is capable of. And of course, if you want to do a very dirty green screen in the back with a green channel, the YU200 is going to do significantly better than the YU300. Now this panel is basically a huge heatsink taking in all this heat, and there are fans inside at various different modes. So pay attention to this fan test, and I will label everything for you to see just how loud these fans actually are in a normal setting. So what's the bottom line here? Are these GVM panels essentially a budget version of the Aputure Nova P300c? To a certain degree, they are. They're not as bright as the Aputure. They're coming in at approximately half a stop to 3/4 of a stop lower in terms of output. And to a certain degree, some people might say, oh, that's not bad. As long as it's not 2 stops dimmer, I can work with that. So that's kind of the major difference you need to understand. But between these two panels, however, there are some caveats, so let's talk about them. Between the two panels, there's a $200 difference, which is not a lot. And when it comes to the output you gain for that extra $200, it's not a lot either. It's about 1/4 of a stop. So in theory, the YU200 might actually be the best deal if you want a panel that kind of operates like this. But the YU200 does have a major caveat here, and that is the fact that the back panel, when it comes to the bicolor, the Kelvin readings are not correct. And as you saw, you have to go to 2900 if you want tungsten and 6600K if you want daylight. And while some people might say, okay, cool, like that's what I do anyways, I'll just have to remember that or put a little like sticky note or a label maker just to make sure I remember. But for some people, this is not acceptable. They need to make sure that the panel on the back is going to give them at least very close to what the color temperature is around in the room. So in which case you're going to want to go with a 300. But the 300, the green channel is not that saturated. And if you're going to be using the green magenta shift tool, you might not actually have a good ability to introduce more green if you need to. Whereas the YU200, you can. There's all that green for you to use if you need to make that shift. So those are kind of the light quality output things that you need to think about. What is most important to you? The Kelvin readings being accurate on the back or having more green? That's kind of the difference. But the YU200 does give you that extra battery cable, whereas the 300, you have to buy that separately. So at the end of the day, you're just gonna have to kind of figure out which one of these panels is gonna work best for you. If you're primarily using bicolored stuff and you wanna make sure you're accurate all the time, the 300 makes the most sense. If that doesn't matter to you, the 200 is the best value. My hope is that GVM will have some sort of firmware update for the 200 model, because I feel like the whole Kelvin reading thing could be fixed in terms of just how they represent it. And that would be great. Whereas the 300, I'm not exactly sure what's going on with that green channel, because if the green channel is not giving me full saturation to begin with, part of me is thinking that the green LED chips are just not of good quality, and therefore we're not reaching full saturation. That's something that the engineers are going to have to make sure they just overhaul the thing and actually give us a good green channel. And hey, that is it for this week, everybody. If this video has made all the influence in your purchasing decisions, I do appreciate it if you check out my affiliate links down below. Again, this costs nothing extra to you, but it does help support the channel should you use them. And of course, if you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave it down below. I will get to them as fast as I can. And until then, like, subscribe, share, and I'll see you guys in the next one.